Welcome to 80s TV Ladies, part of the Weirding Way Media Network.
80s TV ladies, so sexy and so pretty. 80s TV ladies, stepping out into the city. 80s TV ladies, often treated kind of working hard for the money in a man's world. 80s TV ladies.
Here are your hosts, Sharon Johnson and Susan Lambert Haddam.
Thank you, Melissa. I am Susan.
And I'm Sharon. Welcome to 80s TV Ladies, where we explore female-driven television shows from the 1980s and celebrate the people who made them.
As we've been enjoying all these shows and looking back at 1980s television, we are really enjoying how much people love these shows, even now. And we here at 80s TV Ladies are really enjoying your feedback. We're reading all the responses, questions, and comments. Thank you, listeners. Keep them coming. It gives us a lot of inspiration for the next show.
Now we want to dive a little further into how some of these shows still resonate. That even though they're dated in some ways, in other ways they still have an impact. So we're starting a little treat we're currently calling Fanbar. And if you've got a better name for this segment, let us know.
You know, it's the 80s TV Ladies fan bar. I like sidebar or like belly up to the bar. I don't know. We're working on it. Anyway, it's where we're going to look at the love these fans have for these 80s shows.
And so today, a special guest is a fan of Scarecrow and Mrs. King, the action spy comedy that premiered in 1982, starring Kate Jackson and Bruce Boxleitner.
We cover Scarecrow and Mrs. King in our first 5 episodes of season 1. I'm a huge fan of it. So is our guest. Jeanette Valliere has been organizing Scarecrow and Mrs. King anniversary events every 5 years since 2003. The next one will be this year in October.
Welcome, Jeanette. We're so happy to have you on 80s TV Ladies.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's so great to have you join us because we've been communicating a little bit. You sent us some emails. We've been doing all this stuff. Martha Smith loves you and said basically we needed to talk to you. And so we do whatever Martha Smith tells us to do here at 80s TV Ladies. Also, you were one of our early supporters and listeners, so I really appreciate that. Where are you zooming in today from?
Knoxville, Tennessee.
Awesome.
Good old USA.
Yeah. And sort of what's your story, Jeanette? Like how did you get to Knoxville, Tennessee?
Actually, originally I transferred with the company I worked for to Raleigh, North Carolina. And then the tech market dropped, the whole bottom dropped out of the tech market. So pretty much everything where I was closed. So everybody was out of work and looking for a job. And I got hired by a company here in Knoxville and I've been here ever since.
And what do you do?
It here.
What do you do?
I'm in IT. Technically, I'm listed as a business process analyst, but I do a lot of programming and business design and reporting.
So you keep things running for the company.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you hope. They hope.
To.
It's like I'm training some people on how to do what I do so I don't have to do it all the time.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And where are you from originally?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. All right. So you've been around. You've been kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, East Coast. Haven't made it across the Mississippi.
Well, someday you'll have to come out to California. Well, you've been out to California to visit.
I've been to play. I just don't live there. I just don't live. And I have family in Arizona. For sure.
So tell us how you came to be involved in Scarecrow and Mrs. King fandom. How did you get into that world?
Well, it was 1989, I guess. And I was up late one night flipping channels, and on Lifetime, they were rerunning Scarecrow. And I said, well, I had watched it. It was my senior year of college when it came on. It's like, oh, good. I liked this show. Let's get into it. So I was watching it, recorded it on good old VHS back then. And so I had the episodes, and I moved to North Carolina and kind of lost some of that there. And then it came back on again. And it was on PAX, which I think might be Ion now that got bought. Now it's I don't know. It's kind of a strange thing. And I thought, oh, I wonder if this is out on tape. So I got on the internet, which was in its infancy, kind of, I guess, in 1990, and started searching and found the fandom, and really got talking to people. And even back then, we were on, IRC chats.
I vaguely
somebody
remember
knows
those.
it.
Yes.
Somebody knows what that is. And so, and then of course, when AOL came on and we had Instant Messenger and Yahoo groups, so there were fandoms, and I really started hooking up with certain people, got involved in fan fiction reading, and then somebody convinced me to write some. So there was that. And so I've written quite a bit, actually. You could probably find it if I gave you my name. It's still out there. And so we made a lot of friends. A lot of fans did have informal gatherings. There was one lady who's passed away now, but she did groups in DC. She'd have a few people, and it was only a small group, 5 or 10 people. But we would go up there and once a year, and then it expanded a little bit over time. And then more people got involved, and the fandom was really, really active then. I think
in the 90s.
A lot because, I think it was a lot to do with it wasn't being shown anywhere, and then when it came back on, everybody got really involved again. And then when it came out on VHS, people got involved again. And then when it came on DVD, it just kind of every time there's a release of something or it shows up, there's a group that they get together and they do Zoom viewings in different parts of the world. They're all on and they Zoom an episode. So the technology has caught up with us. We were doing it the old way. So
that's one of the nice things about technology. It's made it easier to meet and keep in touch with people around the world who enjoy the same things that you do, which I think is really great.
Yeah, and you wouldn't meet those people otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit further, do you remember how it was you came to watch the show initially?
I was a senior in college when it came on. And, 8:00, it was, you just finished all your homework. You were done with everything. That was when you were crashing, early in the week. And I lived off campus the last year with the friend who lives in Livermore. And so by 8:00 at night, we were just turn on something, let's zone out. We're done with everything we need to do for the day. And it was it's a fun show. It's not too heavy for, it's an 8:00 show in the 80s. They weren't going to do anything too crazy. And it was fun. And we both knew Kate Jackson from The Rookies and Charlie's Angels. We knew Bruce from How the West Was Won, even Bring 'Em Back Alive. We both
I
knew
remember
that.
Bring 'Em Back Alive for sure.
So we knew who he was. So we thought, well, these are two great people we like. Let's watch the show. And it was fun. And so it was a good hour to just kind of de-stress, get away from the craziness of senior year of college.
Well, that's fantastic. I was and still am an avid TV watcher. And as I think all three of us recall, back then it was very easy, relatively speaking, to keep track of all the shows that were on at any given time.
Yes.
So while I remember the show, I honestly don't remember watching it. But for the podcast, I went back and rewatched and said, I'm assuming I didn't watch it since all this seems new and fresh to me, but why didn't I? This is really a lot of fun. I mean,
it is. It's when you think about all the shows that were on in the 80s that were this, the pair, the couple. Yeah, I'm a sucker. I was a Thin Man junkie from way back. So that always appealed to me, that type of kind of screwball comedy, mystery, silliness, that even though he was a spy and you would think things would be kind of serious in the Cold War with the Russians, it really wasn't. Whereas you had Remington Steele was more serious in terms of
it certainly started off a little more serious. It gets pretty goofy in the
it does
seasons
when they get into more of the I think some of the writing but then you had Moonlighting, which was just completely off the wall, right? So there was you had 3 completely different things to watch, and I think I liked them all, no doubt, but I kind of gravitated towards Scarecrow and Mrs. King more because it seemed possible in the 80s that somebody would walk up to you at a train station and hand you a package and you would take it. And it could just happen. And again, Remington Steele, you had a person who studied to do something.
Right.
And you could see yourself doing that as well. But there was something really appealing about the fact that this complete housewife, middle of America type person who had no business doing any of this could become involved in it. And you could kind of see that maybe you could do it.
Yeah, and I think they did a really good job in that first season in particular to sort of ease her into things. It wasn't like she was thrown into the deep end of cases, and it always seemed to be something that was, for lack of a better word, at her level. something she could either offer some insight into because of her
Yes.
her personal life. And that did, you're right, that did make it more relatable in that way. Or like,
Yeah, it's kind of
that
like
could have been me.
the everyday person is saying to this person who's completely lost touch with reality of how real life works. Like, hey, we're going to go set up in this house. We have to be a normal couple. So don't worry about it. All these people are going to show up and welcome us to the neighborhood. You don't have to worry about meeting the neighbors. So I think that was the point of the writing with Juanita and some of the earlier, not Juanita, with
Eugenie
and Brad, saying we have to find a way into these things where something happens where they need her expertise as a normal person. And so it dovetails into the story. So that he has to use her.
Yeah, I thought that was very cleverly done in a lot of the first season, for sure. In that she had something to bring to the table, and it was her knowledge as a person and a mom and a woman, but as a normal person, right?
Right. As opposed to the Francine, who's a woman, yes, in a man's world, who was obviously very good at her job, that she didn't really understand normal life.
Yeah, it was all spies and embassies and,
Yes.
and high government, right?
And princes, and I mean, she was, dating royalty. So yeah, so to keep that balance, he didn't understand her and she didn't understand him, but somehow they worked together to get things done. Although he was very disdainful at the
yes, he's yes. I'm not sure he'd be able to pull that off these days. It's like, you got to be nice to me.
That's true, and she always pointed out that she didn't know what she was doing. She was not saying, "Hey, I'm good at this." It's, "Hey, I don't know how to punch. I need training."
I thought that because we looked at Scarecrow and looked at Remington Steele right after. They're such unique characters, both of them, and I think really, really powerful in their own way women, but it was so clear that, Amanda King is not adept and would never have gone, I'm going to be a spy in her world and in her worldview. Whereas Laura Holt from early days clearly was like, I want to be a detective and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it as well as any man, and I'm going to do it with or without a man. Right.
Yeah. And I think like with Laura, she knew she was good. She knew but she also knew she had to prove herself, and she was constantly having to prove herself, which I understand that. I'm in IT. I'm a woman in IT. Okay. So was my life for early years. A lot of people who had been in the company 40 years, these men, old rednecks who were, it's like, oh, there's a woman. You're not going to tell me what to do, kind of thing. So I understand Laura's perspective. I don't understand Amanda. I'm not married. I have no kids, but I know a lot of people like Amanda. And so I can see both sides. And she was perfectly happy being a housewife.
Yeah, I think
she loved being a mom. And she, I think that's part of what I liked so much, is that her personal life, you saw her interact with her mother, her kids. There was I'm a mom. I'm going to go home. I'm going to take care of this kind of stuff. And then, oh, by the way, I'm going to go off and chase down Russians. She could separate it very easily. And I don't think most people would be able to do that.
I really like the way she, as we're talking about, she evolved too, because when she realized that she did have something to offer in this spy world because of her personal situation that was very different from what everybody else was used to, and saw that she had something to offer, and then asked to be trained and wanted to be trained and wanted to get more involved, and took advantage of the opportunity because she felt she had something to give to the situation. I really liked that. I really liked that a lot. Because she did. She did have and develop skills that were really useful in what they were doing.
She had the people skills where she could look at somebody and say, that person, there's something wrong there. Where they were always looking for the bad guy, and she was looking at the person. So she had that level that they just hadn't developed.
Well, and
somewhere.
I think they give her superpower is in some ways being a mom, right? So like she's coming from a place of, we all got to get along, and I've got to broker peace between my two sons and between, my mom and myself and for school and neighborhood and
everything
and all
and
that.
the Chinese spies
And the Chinese spy.
and the Russian spies. We're all going to get along. We have to do this together. So, hey, I don't care if you're Russian and you're Chinese. We're going to figure this out together.
And I thought that was just like, again, a very lovely and, as we know now, like that's one of the things that women are really good at. Typically, if you want to give them, usually, not always, but can be, better at
the negotiating. Part of it.
Yeah. Let's all try to work this out. And that was clearly what Amanda King was able to take those personal skills that she had and had developed and use them in a particular way in this sort of high octane career. And again, it's pretty goofy. The whole show is pretty goofy, but there was something really empowering. That her ability to change and to adapt to the circumstance of, I need a job and this job's right in front of me and it's kind of fun. Like
and she asked for the job. What, a day after she met the guy? It was I'm looking for a job, and she was willing to be a receptionist. She's like, I can type, she wasn't looking to be a spy. She was just saying, hey, I can help here and I need a job.
Yeah.
So she wasn't angling for something out of her reach. Just, hey, this was interesting and this would be a cool place to work kind of vibe.
And I think discovers that she's good at it, right? That the puzzle making and the, the figuring things out is something that she is clearly very adept at. But also I'm going to look from a different perspective. And I think that's one of the things I've always, you need different people in the room to understand different perspectives. Because
it doesn't matter what job you're in. Yes. If you have everybody who's exactly alike, nothing ever gets done.
Yeah. And I think
it's stagnant.
Yeah. And I think that was a lot of what we were beginning to see in the 70s and 80s television is at least women were stepping into the rooms where they weren't before typically. Yeah. And that made a big difference in outcomes, right? It makes a big difference in what happens
today,
next.
Let's say, and I'm tired of hearing the word representation because everybody in the world is saying representation right now. But think about, a little girl growing up in the 70s. I mean, seeing Charlie's Angels was, oh my God, women. I mean, it wasn't exactly high crime and crazy, but there were 3 women.
They led the
doing
story.
all the work.
Yeah.
Sure, they reported to a guy behind a phone, but they were the ones out there kicking butt and taking down the bad guys. So for me, because that came out when I was in elementary, junior high or whatever. So I was like, wow, that's more action I've seen from a woman in pretty much any show. Yeah. And then you had a couple other things, like there was a female police officer on TJ Hooker. There was a female stunt woman on
the Fall Guy.
Yeah. So there were women starting to appear in roles that you didn't expect to see them as often because you saw men in most of those roles. And although, you look at Moonlighting, she was a model. So, okay, she was a model who wound up in this because she just happened to buy the business. It's one of her investments. But she tried to fit in and do the job, sort of. But she came from a whole different environment. And in this case, same thing. We got a housewife who suddenly dropped into a spy world. Whereas in Remington Steele, all right, he was a con man, but he had the skills to be a detective.
Well, because
because he knew how to con. So
and he knew how to do a lot of things.
He was good at reading people and doing those things. Whereas in this one, it was more oil and water to begin with. They're two completely different lives going on and had to figure out how to work together.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're both conning each other at the beginning of Remington Steele, right? Mm-hmm. She's pretending there's a boss. She's kind of lying and he's lying. And somehow, it does make them in some ways equals and kind of equally complicit to a degree.
And one of the things I liked about that show, as opposed to a lot of other male-female lead shows, was they immediately said, there's attraction here. It's right off the bat in the pilot. There's an attraction, but we're not doing anything about it. Because if you're going to be in this role and I have to put up with you. I can't do that. So there was always the will they won't, there's that tension, but they were really upfront about it, which you never saw.
Yeah, still really don't see. I was surprised in going back to watch Remington Steele how upfront, because I'd forgotten how just upfront they were in conversations between Laura and Steele about that very subject, and her saying very clearly, "I don't trust you, so nothing is going to happen until I do."
Not for his lack of trying.
Exactly. And
she was
not
like,
that she didn't want to, but she just, didn't want to take that leap until she knew more about him.
Well, and also, again, because it was a very adult decision, right?
Mhm.
So much of television is people acting like children, right?
That's true.
People like,
And,
like they're in high school,
when you see a show, I think that's maybe one of the positives I hadn't really thought about with Scarecrow is that there were children. So she had to be the adult. Dottie was more of a child than Amanda was. So, because, mom was off dating the chiropodist and doing, things, learning to fly, oddball stuff. So Amanda was the adult in the home, brokering between her mother as a child and the two children who really were children. So she's going off to the adult world. But half the time you see her treating Lee like he is a child. She knows how to deal with that. So she treats him in that manner and he responds to it.
Yes. Because in his backstory, he has not been raised by...
His parents died so young. And
So
he didn't have that.
He's working through some evolving issues.
Right. Which you see when, in the ACM kid, when he's taking care, he's got the kid there and he's buying him all this, and she says, "What are you trying to do? Win Father of the Year?" I mean, this is ridiculous. All these things that you've done. But he's basically saying, well, this is what I wish had happened. But she's saying, this is not how you treat it. Right. He's a young adult kind of here. No, that's not right.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, all right. We could talk about Scarecrow and Mrs. King all day, clearly, but
and Remington Steele
and
Moonlighting. Keep going. Keep showing me 80s TV shows. I'm a TV junkie. I'm a junkie myself too.
So what you were sort of part of this fan group. How did it end up? Basically, because you're running these anniversary events now.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it had been bandied about for a long time. People were always saying, "Oh, we should try to do this," but nobody ever really did anything. And a lot of people always had the ideas like, "Oh, we should do it in DC," or, "Hey, I live in Texas. Let's do one. Let's have them all come to Texas." And most of us like, do you realize how expensive something like that would be to, bring people to Texas? And so one girl it was on the PAX forum. I think she got talking to some people and said, it would be fun to do this, but I have no knowledge. How would we do it? Is there anybody out there who'd be interested? And another girl had said, sure, I'll give it a stab. I'll try to reach out to some people. And so a few of us got on board because I said, well, you got to pay for it. You got to have a place to have it. It's not going to be in somebody's backyard because I really don't. Well, actually, knowing Bruce and Martha, they would show up. But typically, you probably need a venue, and so you have to pay for something, and you have to pay for guests to come. And she was all of the impression, oh no, they'll all come for free. Everybody will just show up. It'll be a big party. And I was like, I think you've got the wrong idea. So as time went on, we realized that only one of us really knew what we were doing. So I kind of wound up
producing it all.
It was co-coordinator when we started, and then my shirt says co-coordinator. My friend actually gave me this shirt.
God. Nice.
That's
so cool.
Yeah, she did it for me for the 20th.
For the 20th,
because you're really the coordinator. So it kind of started there, and that first one was quite the learning experience. And
so the first one was 2003.
2003. It was the 20th anniversary of the show, and I first called Beverly. I was like, she's at the hotel, and they called Beverly. So I called and left. I just called the hotel and said, basically, it's like, well, I'd like to speak to her about potentially doing this, and we would use the hotel. Why not? It's convenient. She owns it.
Yeah,
seemed like a good idea. And they put me through to Beverly. So,
oh my God, you're my superhero now.
And I was like, Okay, well, I wasn't expecting to talk to her, so I was a little tongue-tied. And we chatted, and she's lovely. And I said, well, I would love this. This would be fantastic. Let's do it. My her daughter-in-law at the time was the head of hospitality or whatever she was. We'll get you hooked up. So I went out there and I met with Beverly, and Martha came down, and we went and had lunch and discussed things and said, okay, let's do this. And so that's how we kind of got into the hotel, and we got things. And we've been to a couple of cons where Bruce was. So I talked to him at one of the cons because, have you heard about this from your fan club president? And he said, no, I haven't. She hasn't mentioned it. So I said, well, I'm not sure. Did she get the message or what? So here's the information. Are you interested? Yes. Okay. So we had Bruce and Martha and Beverly on board. And I had met Martha and Greg. They had gone to a fan club event for Bruce. So they were surprise guests. He didn't know they were coming. His fan club president or whatever she was, had sprung this. And, oh, here's a surprise. Here are Martha and Greg. So I had met them, and I was seated next to Martha's husband, Keith. So Keith and I chatted throughout that. So when I pulled Martha and said, hey, we met back at this thing. So that's how I knew Martha, and we got along great. We had a great time. I'm telling you, I'm so happy I got to meet and spend time with Beverly Garland.
Oh, yeah.
She is was one of the most amazing women I've ever met. She's just wonderful. She was a mom to everybody. I'll tell you, the first event, we said, well, it was held in October, and it's always in October. We got birthday cakes for Martha and Beverly because their birthdays are just a couple of days apart in October. And Beverly insisted on cutting the cake and handing it out to everyone. Literally sliced the cake and walked around and handed everybody a slice of cake.
Wow.
And she's just wonderful. I said, she's my definition of a Hollywood broad. She's out there. She's very real, down to earth. Nothing seems to faze her.
The book about her sounds like that. I'm glad to hear that is true in real life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. She was happy to do anything we wanted to do. She was all for it. She just loved the show. She loved working with them. She had a great time discussing it at the Q&A. She told some fun stories that they're on the DVD, but I don't remember all of them. But I would. It's been a long time.
Yeah, long time, since 2003.
Yeah. But she was wonderful. I'm so glad I got the chance to have her at the event. She came to the first two, and then of course she was ill. So
that's fantastic. And so 2003 success, and you're like, oh, we should do this again. I mean, you're like, I need a break for 5 years.
Well, yeah. Well, yes. Before the thing was even over, people were saying, are we going to do it next year? And I said, you've got to be out of your mind to do this again next year. Most people don't understand what goes into planning an event, especially when you're doing it from the other side of the country. And it's not cheap. And trying to pull everything together and, get the people there, get the commitments, get a good goodie bag, all sorts of things that go into it, dealing with the hotels. So you want to do some fundraising in between if you can. So I said, well, we'll do it again, but let's do 5 years because it'll be the 25th. So it'll be the silver anniversary. So that's kind of a big deal for most people. Let's do it in 5 years. So of course, when the 25th came around, it's like, we're going to do it again in 5 years, right? So it's become an every 5 year thing. Well, maybe I'll be done on the 50th.
As the organizer coordinator, are you able to enjoy any of the events or any of the?
Yeah, because I've been dealing with these folks for so long, it's not up to, I'm not in the, oh my God, I got to see him and get an autograph thing. So I don't have that pressure on me like a lot of fans. It's like their first time meeting them. So I get to observe them being so excited to meet them. The day before the event, we always do a Warner Brothers tour. And that's always fun for most because they get to see filming locations on site. We usually stop by stage 25 to see their names on the plaque. The show name is there. Pictures. 1 year we were able to go to the ranch. 1 year we were able to go to the Disney ranch. So we've done other things for the fans. And then on Saturday, the day of the event, I'm pretty busy, But really, once everybody's signing autographs and people are in line, I can kind of back off.
You're kind of like, okay,
Yeah,
the train has left the station.
it's time for everybody. I don't have to do anything because it's self-regulating as people just get in line and get their autographs. And people are coming up and asking questions, just, when are you going to do the drawing, or what are we doing after lunch, kind of things. But I can kind of just sit back and assess at that point, and then I can wander around and see what's going on. But the nighttime, I can really enjoy that because we sit for dinner, and then we have the Q&A, which I just walk around with the microphone, handing it to people to ask questions. So everybody's enjoying that.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
And so how many have you had? So 2000, I'd have to do some math. What's 2020? What's the next one?
This is the 40th, so it'll be the 5th one. We'd started with 20.
Okay. All right.
So this is 20 years. This next year will be 20 years since the first one.
Yeah.
Does it seem like a well-oiled machine at this point, in terms of the event and the things on your plate?
Well, knowing what needs to be done, yeah. I mean, there's a list. We know, what we need from the hotel, what we need to get the guests and everything. And this year, because we knew ahead of time a few things, and we already had the complete dossier from what we did last year of what we needed at the hotel in a PDF file. We just sent that to hotels and said, this is what we need.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the dates we want. Or can you do it? Can you, so last time we took a vote with the fans and said, well, would you prefer going back to the Beverly? Because now with Beverly gone and her name's not on the hotel anymore, or would you like a hotel closer to the airport so you don't have to rent a car? And the response was, let's be closer to an airport. So most of the people didn't rent anything. And so we said, well, if we're going to do that, then let's get a bus, and everybody can pay to take the bus, and we'll go to the Warner Brothers tour on the bus. So everybody hopped on the bus and went to Warner Brothers. So that was an added wrinkle. We never did that before.
So there's always something new when you're producing. Yes.
Sure. I mean, something always comes up you don't expect.
And so how many people were involved last time you did it?
I think last time we had 60 fans. We had Bruce, Martha, and Greg, and Myron, and of the main cast, the four of them, Dennis Duckwall, who's one of the producers. And we had guest stars. Usually Richard Hatch is Richard Hurd, sorry, Richard Hatch, wrong show, Battlestar Galactica.
Yes. Do you organize that one too?
No, but I have met Dirk Benedict and Richard Hatch. The Dirk Benedict was on my bucket list.
Dirk Benedict was on my bucket list, and I have met him too. It was fantastic. We can tell stories later.
I just have to get to the Sean Cassidy concert, because I told Eric Estrada, I had met Dirk Benedict and I met Eric, and I said, if I could just meet Sean Cassidy, I'll have met all the posters that were on my wall. So yeah, I'm working toward it. Anyway, so we had, so Richard used to come because he's a friend of Myron's, and Myron said at the very first one, the 20th, he said, are you inviting guest stars? Because I know Richard. Sure, let's bring Richard. So Richard Hurd came to every one. He couldn't come last time. He was ill. And then of course he passed away not long after the 35th. But last year we had Stephen Mox came. He was one of the guest stars. Andrea, oh good God, I can't remember her last name. It's going right out of my head.
It's
She
okay.
was a guest
It
star.
happens to us all
She
the
played
time.
Eva Spinelli in the.
Oh yeah. I'll remember, or I'll look. I'll Google her.
It's
real
her
quick.
last name is dropped right out of my head. And Paul Stout actually was there for the first couple. Then Greg was the last two. We're trying to get the two of them
You need the
together.
two of them.
Yeah, and Paul he didn't see the email, and he doesn't check his email. He's terrible about it. So we're trying to get them both there. We got a couple other people that we've invited. Peter Jurasik came a few years back. He was a guest star, and the woman who played his wife in the episode was his real life girlfriend during the episode. So he said, she lives in LA. Let's see if she can come. So he got her to come. She's a lawyer now, so she's got nothing to do with it, but she came just to come and for the afternoon, and she didn't know what to expect, but she had a good time. So yeah, it's kind of snowballed. One person says, oh, I know this person. We had a crew member come last time, popped in. Martha had run into him and said, come on by. So he showed up. And so we've kind of just networking through Kurt Galveo, who he was one also producer. He came for the first one might have been there for the second. He was busy. Brad and Eugenie, I hit them up last time, but they were busy that weekend. So I'm hoping that we're going to get them this time.
Yeah,
so every year
they were probably
we
still
ask
working
people,
on Supernatural at that time, and October is.
Yeah. Well, they actually had an event that day, that evening, that was pre-planned because last year it was the 16th or so. It was right before Halloween. So they had some event that was that Saturday, so they couldn't be there. So I'm hoping we're going to give them enough advance notice that maybe one or both of them can come this time. Because God knows I would love to pick their brains. Q&A would be a lot more interesting.
It would be so much fun. And again, we got to talk with Eugenie, and she's just delightful.
Yeah, and there are some people I spoke to. I'm blanking on her name, but she actually was in How the West Was Won with Bruce as well. She played his girlfriend for a couple episodes, and then she was brought on to kind of be his love interest, but she only lasted one episode, of course, because that was
because it was like a Hardy Boys.
Yeah,
if you become a Hardy Boys girl,
that wasn't gonna
you're
happen.
kind of either getting killed or something at the end.
Well, she was there for an episode, and then she didn't get mentioned again. But she was dating him at the time, and so I didn't have a way to reach her. She's not doing anything. So her daughter is an actress, so I literally sent a message to her daughter's agent and said, "This is a long shot, but I'm trying to reach her mother." And I got a phone call from her mother.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And we had a wonderful day, but she said, "No, I'm just so out of the industry. I would feel like I don't belong." I said, "No, trust me, with these fans, they would be so happy to see you." She's like, "No, I just feel like I've been out of it too long." So, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to work on her again this year.
Keep going.
I'll send her another message and say, "Come on."
All right. So your first event, do you remember how many people were there for that one? Was it bigger, smaller?
45, 50. No, it's actually kind of been in the 50 to 60 range every time because it's a different mix of people.
Okay.
We've only had there, as a matter of fact, at the last one, we had 4 people who've been to all 4.
That's cool.
So they got a little extra, hey, 4-time attendee on their little name tag at dinner. But it's been like there was a woman and her mom who came to the first one, and they said, "Yeah, we're only going to come every 10." So she came to the 20th and the 30th. So they may show up.
They may show up for the 40th.
I don't know. They may.
Right.
They just might.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about where and when and how people can come?
Sure. You have the website, I'm pretty sure. I sent you the website. And we have a Facebook page. And it will be in LA. It's going to actually be at the same hotel we were last time, the LAX Hilton, which is right near the airport. So they have a shuttle, so you don't need a car. If you do have a car, they do have on-site parking, which is helpful in LA. And it will be on October 14th, 2023. That's
cool.
the Saturday of the day-long event. The Friday, we usually organize a Warner Brothers tour.
That is so fantastic. I'm really excited. I don't know. Maybe 80s TV ladies have to come. For sure.
You guys should come.
Maybe
you should come and do a podcast right there.
We might have to do a special podcast.
That would be fun.
That would be super
You're welcome.
fun. Oh my God.
You're
All
absolutely
right,
welcome to come. You want to haul all your equipment down there.
I'm
If
sure
you've got the little portables.
I'm sure we've got some portable ways to do stuff. I'm looking at Kevin. He's giving me the
Sure,
short nod,
it'd be
which
a
is
quick way
we
to-
have to.
To interview, like I said, Andrea was there last time. I don't know if she just happened to be in town. She doesn't live in LA. She just happened to be there. She said, "Oh, I'm going to be there. Sure, I can come, but only for the afternoon, evening. I couldn't do the morning." So she came for part of the day.
And so you run Martha Smith's website and Facebook page?
It's her Facebook page. It was a website. We did have a website. And then when Facebook came on, they had groups. I said, I'm paying for a website and this, and we can do everything on Facebook. So I switched it all to Facebook. So it's the Martha Smith official. I usually, because I've shared your posts on there.
Yeah.
And I share it on our Scarecrow page, the Scarecrow anniversary page as well.
All right. Well, Martha Smith seems like a delightful person. So
Absolutely.
I'm
She
excited
is.
to hear that she is as well.
She
Not
is
just on our
not
podcast.
anything like Francine.
No, she is not. I got that for sure.
She is definitely a Midwesterner. Her
Yes.
sensibility is very, very much rooted in her Midwestern, and she's a friend to all. She's just absolutely lovely. And Bruce is the most down to earth guy you'll ever meet. Paul and Greg are great. Everybody in the cast is really very nice. The guest stars, and I have met Kate on numerous occasions. She's always been very nice to me. We keep hoping that she'll come, but she's
40th
not
anniversary. Yeah.
she doesn't like crowds much.
Mm.
So I understand if that's not your thing, but we'd love to have her. If she could come. So we keep hoping.
Well, we keep hoping too. You never know when someone's going to show up somewhere.
Yeah, she showed up once when Bruce he had to drop out of his fan club event because he got a role, so he couldn't be there. She came up and took his spot.
That's amazing.
She came in his she
Fantastic.
came in his stead. Yeah, because his fan club president wasn't really her fan club, or she did something with her, so she knew her. So she said, "Well, Bruce can't be here. Can you come? Because all these fans are here." So she subbed for him.
Oh, that's great. That's really
But
cool.
we'd like the two of them to get in the same room together.
That would be great.
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah.
Boy, some people would love that, I think.
Yes.
Hey, so I know we talked about your fan fiction. Will you tell us what your nom de plume is? Is that how
Sure.
you pronounce it?
It's my
nom
old-
de plume?
Or my pseudonym or whatever you would call it. It's Bohemian Fling. That's the email address that I created because I was online. I needed my original email, which a lot of people screen name, the old timers who recognize it. It was SMK Junkie. And my mother said, I don't like that. I don't like junkie. So I took Bohemian Fling, and if you want to know where it came from, it's from an episode, so you have to pay attention. She makes a drink called the Bohemian Fling. So I took the name of a drink.
That is
Sounds
fantastic.
perfect.
Sounds like something my husband would do.
Why not?
Take the name of the drink.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Because we talk about fan fiction on the show because I think it's one of the things that's really very special to the fandoms of television shows are unique, I think, in their own way. I mean, I think we're starting to see it with franchises, certainly with
The Marvel
franchise
universe
movies.
is starting to become like that. Yeah. There's a little bit more of it.
But it's just really spectacular how inspiring these shows are to people and that they want to continue with those characters and continue with those stories and just expand the world for themselves.
In our case too, was continuing the series. There was a group that put together season 5. There's a season 5 fan fiction.
Oh.
A group of people said, "Okay, yeah, let's get together and let's make season 5." So they
I
tried
love that.
instead of doing an alternate universe or just a story within a story, they said, "Well, let's see if we can extend the series," because that didn't happen.
All right, so let's just tell me, do you keep the secret marriage or?
Oh, I don't remember. It's a long time. But no, that's, pretty much universal. Everybody hates the secret marriage. I don't know too many people who are happy about the secret marriage. And like, come on, if you're going to get married, geez, come on. I mean, and it wasn't let's say it wasn't a secret at the office. I think everybody there knew what was going, but keeping it from mom and the kids was kind of silly. Sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been fantastic. We could talk all day, but unfortunately we can't today, but we can have you back on and we can definitely, I'd love to, I really think we should be there or part of the anniversary event because it's right up our wheelhouse.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a great place to talk to fans and get their opinions. Like, you'd asked, like Martha was saying, what is it about the show that people keep coming back to? You're going to get 100 different answers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. For me, I thought about that because we were talking about it. And, I think it's just, there's heart to the show that isn't in other shows. It's something that came a long time ago. It's like every character has chemistry with every character. I mean, Lee even has chemistry with Dottie.
Yeah.
He has chemistry with the kids. Joe shows up. He's fine. They do fine. It's not that, again, unlike many shows of the ex-husband isn't the jerk.
Yeah.
He's there. He's just the ex-husband. No problem. He's part of the life. Things move on. Dottie has chemistry with Francine when she shows up out
As
of the
Magda, or no, when she shows up with the
She
dog
showed-
sitting. Yeah.
The
Yeah,
dog said, she was a monkey. She had a pet
yeah. Oh,
monkey.
that's right.
Yes, of course she did. But Billy has chemistry with all the different people, even when he showed up, when
Oh,
he has to
yeah.
talk to them. There's no division in there. So there's just these little sparks of everybody somehow melds together, even though they're all in completely different worlds.
I think for me, because it seems to be the pattern with most of the shows that I like, most of the shows that I watch. I like the characters and I want to spend time with them. So I'm happy to go on whatever journey the writers are taking them on this week, because I'm very much enjoying spending time with these characters.
Right, because certainly the plots were not
Yeah. No.
anything
Yeah, which is fine. Yeah.
deep.
Yeah.
And even Bruce said, you're an 8:00 show, and he'd say things like, "Can't I just shoot him? I mean, I got a gun.
I have a gun.
I have a gun, and
I'm a
and he's like,
spy.
he's a rush. Why wouldn't I just shoot? Well, no, you can't do that. It's 8:00 TV. So, there were things. There's some latitude there because it was back then. It was family hour.
Mm-hmm.
So the plots, they were a little goofy sometimes, and it had to be because of the time we were in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why Moonlighting was so different, because he was doing things on that show that.
Yeah, you were like,
that
oh
was,
my God.
Yeah, we took a left turn somewhere. You're not fitting the norm. And that's why people liked it so much. I think, that, boy, this is different. But there's something familiar about the silliness of like I said, I was a huge Nick and Nora fan. So the Thin Man, I loved it. My mother, introduced me to that. It's like, boy, I love this stuff. These are great type things. So when this came out, it reminded me of that.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. I no doubt. And I don't know if we talked to Jeannie about this, but definitely influenced heavily Scarecrow, Mrs. King, and Remington Steele. No doubt.
Yeah, I wish I'm a little behind sometimes on where you are, and because I don't know when you're actually doing the interview, to ask you, Jeannie, because Bruce has said a few times that he seems to remember, but he doesn't know if it's true that Eugenie would write his part and Brad would write Amanda. That's how you got that weird juxtaposition of how they behaved.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
We might have to.
I'm sure we didn't ask her about that, but that's really interesting.
And
Wow.
I thought about it too late to send it to you before you were actually going to be interviewing her, but it was a question that it's come up many times. And I keep thinking, I probably should just email Brad and say, hey, this came up, tell me. But it's one of those things. It's like, maybe that's why some of this stuff worked the way it did, because she was thinking in a different way. I'm thinking like a woman, but I'm acting like a man.
Mhm.
So how is he going to behave in the situation?
Well, we did talk about in our interview with Robin Bernheim for Remington Steele, like the idea of like how, who gets to create characters? Do you have to be the gender that you're writing for or not? I mean, that seems unwieldy and not possible.
How would you do that as an author?
How would you do that?
I guess?
But how do you put yourself into those other shoes? Like, and it was in the,
Right.
Michael Gleason and Bob Butler created a very feminist character,
Yes.
and they may not even have known they were creating. They were just creating a
Yeah, I'm
unique
not sure.
woman.
Yeah, I think that was more of the point in that regard. This is something that we haven't seen on TV. So we're spinning it, spinning
Yeah.
it on its head. We're going to have the female detective who's just frustrated by the man who's walked into her life, as opposed to the other way around. But yeah, Laura was very, you talk about feminist, and I don't know what my real definition of feminism is. For me, it's more, I'm a woman. I can do anything a man can do. It boils down to that. And so with Laura, she's like, I'm taking the reins. That's why I had said Murphy Brown, Designing Women. Those were the two shows for me that were like, hey, they're in charge and they're taking any guff. And they don't care if they're single. They don't care if somebody says you should have kids. It's like, no, I don't care. Laura didn't care about that. She had a sister who was doing that.
Yep.
And of course, there's Beverly Garland telling her, you should be doing it too. But that, to me, that part of her was very feminist. I'm in charge. This is my agency. And yeah, you had mentioned it on the first one for that was, it got watered down. she wasn't written as strongly as the seasons went on. They became more partners instead of her being in charge. And I think she was bristling at it to begin with.
Yeah.
Because he came into her world and got in the way. And so that I liked that. I think they probably could have done more with that, but I think they found their niche with the banter, and now it got into that. Yeah, that's what happens. But yeah, I think when you're a writer of anything, books, movie scripts, if you're going to be the writer, you got to figure out how to write from a child, an adult, an old man. You haven't been any of those things. I haven't. I was a child, but it was a long time ago. How do you put yourself in that role to write? I mean, Philip and Jamie actually were pretty good characters for kids on TV.
They weren't
brats.
They weren't. Yeah, they were actually. I loved that, and you sort of wanted more of them. I think, which is weird. I mean, usually for kids stuff, particularly when it's kids in a not kids show, right? It's not the Partridge Family.
It wasn't about them.
It was a flavor, but I was because they felt like real kids. They really did. Right.
They were off doing their own. They were going to school. They were falling off their skateboards. They were going to baseball, and she was involved in those things. So you saw them as a family unit, and they weren't just screaming bratty children who just ran in, screamed something, and ran out.
Yeah. Yeah. So
they participated.
Yes. Well, hey, Jeanette, it's been so fantastic to have you on. I mean, this is great. So we're going to stay in touch. Thank you for, I'm so glad Martha put us together, and it's just
Martha knows everybody.
Martha does know everybody. She is like she's the connector. Like she is really,
she remembers
really
it. I mean, there are
fantastic.
other people that like the other fans you're going to talk to.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It's like, I've been involved in the fandom since the early 90s, late 80s. Some of these people have just kind of popped up over the years. It's like, wow, where'd you come from?
Right. Hey, newbie, get in line.
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like, well, and then it's like, whoa, now we're the experts. We're the things like, I don't care about any of that. I guess I've reached, when it was new and it's fun to go do these things. And now it's more, I've kind of backed off the online stuff because there was a lot of drama.
There can be, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't need that in my life. So I'm happy to do the anniversary events and keep my hand in, and I'm on the, pages and I hear stuff, but I don't care about, the day in, day out, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just kind of taking that step.
Yeah. We're going to try to talk to the podcast folks and MKC and also David. Yeah. So we're excited because it is. You guys are really robust. You're keeping the love alive. Yeah. I love the, I'm finding out things I don't know, so that's great.
Oh yeah, we know all sorts of stories.
You guys know every story.
I've been hearing stories from Bruce and Martha and Beverly for a long time.
Right.
Things I don't repeat.
Okay, we might have to have you on with Martha, and then I think we can just start telling tales. Get Bruce on. Well, forget about it.
You get Bruce and Martha together, Bruce will tell you all about everybody Martha's ever dated.
I know. We want to hear about the Germans. Okay.
Oh, and the Italian. You know about the Italian.
The Italian. Oh my God. All right.
When she was in Europe, she had fun. Let's just say that.
I love her.
As well she should. Good for her.
Oh my God. Yeah. Thank you very much.
She was single. Why not?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jeanette.
So great to have you.
Nice talking to you.
Take care.
Thanks. Have a good night.
First, in today's audiography, you can find Jeanette at facebook.com.
And we'll drop the links to her fan fiction and the SMK anniversary site on the 80s TV Ladies website. But you can also find info on the 40th anniversary at facebook.com/Scarecrow and Mrs. King anniversary. Don't forget, for ad-free versions of 80s TV Ladies, go to patreon.com/80s TV Ladies.
As always, thank you for listening to 80s TV Ladies. We love hearing from you. So send us your thoughts or questions at our website, 80stvladies.com. That's 80stvladies.com. We read every email.
Be sure to tune in for our next episode.
We will be bringing back our favorite 90s TV babies to talk about It's a Living. If you want to join in and watch our It's a Living selections, check our description for what episodes we've assigned the 90s TV babies for this special 80s SmartCom.
I can't wait to hear what they think, Sharon.
We never know what they're going to think.
I can't wait.
Coming up soon, our first Patreon-only exclusive episode of 80s TV Ladies.
That's right, a very special modern Barbie episode of 80s TV Ladies. We'll be joined by the 90s TV babies, so get ready.
We hope 80s TV Ladies brings you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch, all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.
Thanks for listening.